God warned us about this, and although you may be shocked with the contents of this video, make no mistake, it serves as evidence that we're in the last days. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this one. I can tell you this right now, what you're going to see is kind of shocking in a way, but at the same time, it's not going to be if you're studying the word and you understand the things that we're supposed to be expecting in these last days. Now, what you're going to watch is Senator Cruz actually, for lack of a better term, hammering on the Secretary of State, Blinken. And the answers that Blinken provides are absolutely atrocious. They are complete lies through and through. And what I hope to do is to be able to expose these lies, but I want to be able to provide some context as into what you're about to see, because what this relates to specifically is Israel. Now, the Senate hearing is regarding the wars on Ukraine and Israel. Although the United States of America is involved in many other proxy wars, these are actually very direct. And what's really important to understand is the representations being made by the Secretary of State are a bold-faced lie. There's a bunch of gaslighting going on, and let me just explain a few things here. Number one, the Bible told us that we should expect things like this to happen. The Bible gives us very, very clear insight as into the types of things that we'll see in the last days. And the other thing is, we should not be surprised when we begin to see the world turning against Israel. Why? Because the Bible tells us about that as well. Let's start off with 2 Timothy chapter 3. I'll read this. I have read this to you guys so many times, it's not even funny, right? But it says this, "This know also that in the last days, perilous times shall come." Now, I think I have very strong standing when I say that we are undoubtedly in the most perilous times that we have ever seen in human history. Certainly world history, absolutely human history. We have never seen times more perilous than the times that we are observing right now. But look what it goes on to say. It says, "For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure, more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away." And it goes on to describe what these people do and the characteristics that are oftentimes associated by their everyday actions. But the reality of it is, what I just read to you is a very, very powerful and clear picture of what we are seeing today. Everywhere we go, we are seeing these characteristics very clearly and very openly and very obviously, right? And then, of course, you go to Zechariah chapter 12 and you go to Zechariah chapter 14, and it tells us very clearly that in the last days, we are going to see an increase in anti-Semitism. We're going to see attacks against Jews, attacks against Jerusalem, and of course, a general mindset of the hatred of Christians. It's very obvious. We'll see it there. And of course, I'll read this to you at the end of this video so that we can gain a little bit more clarity. But we are seeing this. We're watching this happen. So let's go back and reflect upon the founding of our nation for just 1 second, because it's really important to recognize the fact that when you go through the Declaration of Independence, when you look at the Constitution, when you look at all of the documents that relate to the views and the ideas of our founding fathers, they all stipulate that freedom is God's idea. And if you continue to pursue the true and living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then of course you will see the blessing of the republic continue to grow. You will actually see God continue to grow the people in this country, and that freedom would be something that would expand and blessings would continue to flow in this nation. But the moment we turn our back on the true and living God becomes the very moment that our nation is not blessed. And of course, part of what we do as Americans is we not only support and love the people of God, but we also love and support Israel, especially when we consider what the Bible says about Israel. And now that we are living in a day and an age where we have these government leaders who absolutely hate God, who hate freedom, who cannot stand anything that has anything to do with righteous principles, are we surprised that they're denying the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Are we surprised that they're walking away from principles of freedom? My goodness, they're trying to literally jail a president who is running to become a president again. Like literally, the former president, they are trying to put him in jail so that he won't get elected. What an obscene, absurd, seemingly banana republic we're living in right now. It's absolutely crazy. And by the way, when you watch this video, you'll see evidence that what I am saying is true. Again, let's roll this video. You'll see Ted Cruz questioning Antony Blinken on these things. And look at what Blinken says concerning the position of the United States as it relates to Israel. And I'm going to stop it every now and again because I want you guys to see where the real lies are. And we'll get into some history so that we can clarify what's going on. So let's get into this.
Senator. Mr. Secretary, you have presided over the worst foreign policy disaster of modern times.
Yep.
When Joe Biden became president, he inherited peace and prosperity in the world. We now have two simultaneous wars waging, the worst war in Europe since World War II and the worst war in the Middle East in 50 years. Both, I believe, were caused by this administration's consistent weakness. And indeed, your foreign policy is precisely backwards from what a rational American foreign policy should be. To our friends and allies, this administration has consistently undermined, weakened, and attacked them. And to our enemies, this administration has shown constant appeasement and indeed has flowed billions of dollars to the enemies of America who want to kill us.
He's right.
Senator Barrasso asked you about Ibrahim Raisi. Your State Department put out a statement sending condolences for his death. Mr. Secretary, is the world better today now that Raisi is dead?
By the way, Ibrahim Raisi, for those of you that don't know, which I'm sure all of you do, is the president, well, now the former president of Iran, who died in a helicopter crash. It's the ultimate mess around and find out, but that's a whole other story. He died with Abdullahian, who of course is a foreign minister. They are the two of the three most powerful people in Iran, which of course is a terror nation, a terror state. They are evil, wicked, dark, demonic people who right now are screaming in hell. That's a whole other story. But yes, the State Department offered condolences for the death of Raisi. Yeah, that happened. Take a listen.
Given the horrible acts that he engaged in, both as a judge and as president, to the extent he can no longer engage in them, yes, the Iranian people are probably better off.
You didn't say that in your statement, did you?
I believe that we did. And certainly our spokesperson...
Today, the United Nations is flying their flag at half-staff to mourn the death. Would you agree that it is utterly disgraceful for the United Nations to be mourning the deaths of the butcher of Tehran?
We're certainly not mourning his death. As I said, we expressed...
Would you agree it's disgraceful for the UN to be?
I'll look at what they've done. We certainly would not do that.
What they've done is flown the flag at half-staff. Is that disgraceful?
We wouldn't do that, and we would certainly find that.
And I would note that's the absence of American leadership. All right, let's shift.
So did you notice why he says it's the absence of American leadership? Because the Secretary of State is not ready or willing, for that matter, to say that the UN behaved disgracefully in flying their flag at half-staff and, of course, having a moment of silence for Raisi and Abdullahian, which, by the way, is the head of the IRGC, and they are literal propagators of terrorism, okay? So that's really interesting. And by the way, Antony Blinken is lying about the statement that they released regarding Raisi, because the statement that they released regarding Raisi had nothing to do with the fact that we're better off because he's dead. As a matter of fact, it was them offering their condolences as though Raisi was a legitimate leader of a nation that was actually contributory to the existence of the rest of the world. This guy is a liar. Folks, he's a liar. Make no mistake about it, he's lying. But we're in the last days and we should be expecting this. But guess what? It gets a lot better than this. That's sarcasm, by the way.
Washington Post on May 11th wrote an article. I'm going to read the opening paragraph. The Biden administration, working urgently to stave off a full-scale Israeli invasion of Rafah, is offering Israel valuable assistance in an effort to persuade it to hold back, including sensitive intelligence to help the Israeli military pinpoint the location of Hamas leaders and find the group's hidden tunnels, according to 4 people familiar with the U.S. offers. Is that paragraph accurate?
Exactly the opposite. First of all, no one has done more to defend Israel than Joe Biden.
Okay, first of all, he's a liar. To say that nobody has done more than Joe Biden to defend Israel. Nothing could be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, let's just do a little bit of history. Let's just hit one piece of history. But there's many, many more that we can look at. But perhaps the most significant piece in history that we can talk about is Joe Biden's stand on the Yemeni Houthis and what exactly happened when that took place. The moment he came into office, what did he do? He declared the Yemeni Houthis as being non-combatants. He referred to them no longer as a terrorist organization, which pretty much tied the hands of Saudi Arabia with respect to their weapons deal, which of course substantially tied the hands of Israel because it slowed down any potential for normalization that could have ever existed between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, somehow, some way, Israel and Saudi Arabia are still working through that. But the Biden administration has, at every bend, literally sabotaged any effort for Israel to become successful at any level for any reason. Shall I give another example of this? Shall I give the example of Joe Biden pretty much supposedly in a very superficial way saying don't to Iran?
Mr. President, what is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
Are American personnel and assets at risk, Mr. President?
And Iran, of course, a day later, choosing to fire on Israel in the largest scale attack in 50 years in the Mideast, actually probably even bigger than that. More rockets fired, more missiles, more drones, all towards Israel, designed to destroy the nation. Literally, if none of those were stopped, Israel wouldn't even be on the map right now, right? And yet, the administration continues to go out of their way to tell Israel, you better not do anything. You better not defend yourself. You better not do anything. Blinken is a liar. This will make myself very, very clear. He's a liar. And by the way, we shouldn't be surprised by this because this stuff is biblical. We knew that this stuff would happen. Hell, and by the way, another reason why it's biblical is because the United States of America is indeed inconsequential in Bible prophecy. And it's always been my prayer that it was inconsequential in Bible prophecy because there was such a radical spiritual awakening that when the rapture took place, we would all be raptured. And as a result of the rapture, the country would be vacated and it would become inconsequential as a result. I'm still praying for that. I'm still hoping for it, but it's not looking good. It looks like this country is becoming inconsequential because of these freedom-hating, God-hating, evil, wicked rulers that are destroying our nation. And they're doing it very well. Okay, Antony Blinken does not like our country. Okay, I'll make myself very, very clear here.
Is that paragraph?
Let me finish, if I may, please. He was there right after.
I'm not interested in a campaign speech. I have limited time. Is the paragraph in the Washington Post accurate?
And by the way, the fact that Biden was there right after was simply Biden literally seeking to stop or to slow down the response of Israel. Everybody knew that Israel's response to everybody in Gaza would have been very, very fast. It would have been quick. They would have surrounded that place and completely destroyed it. They would have completely trampled it down. But the United States of America basically said, we don't want you defending yourself or your citizens. At least hold off right now. That's the reality of it. Hamas would have been gone very quickly and way less casualties would have taken place if Israel was allowed to do what it intended to do at the very beginning. But because of the Biden regime, that did not happen, especially with the help of Antony Blinken. Let's just get real for a second, guys. That's what's really happening here.
As you read it, no. To the contrary, we're providing everything we possibly can to Israel to help them find.
So the four sources that briefed the Post, and by the way, briefed multiple other media outlets, they were lying?
Absolutely.
So it's amazing the kind of gaslighting that's going on. Yeah, they were lying. Absolutely. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. They were telling the truth. He's gaslighting, right? They have suspended the shipment of arms. They've enabled other nations. Listen, Iran sat down with the United States of America in January to have multilateral discussions between the two nations in how to subvert the Netanyahu government. They wanted to actually undermine Netanyahu's government. And that's their definition of putting a stop to the war in Gaza. This is the same administration. These guys are liars. Listen to his lie. We'll let it go for a little while.
So, all right. So that, did the administration offer to provide the locations of senior Hamas leaders to Israel if they didn't invade Rafah?
That's, again, totally misleading and wrong. Here's what we've said, and here's what we're doing. We have said that there is a better way to deal with the challenge.
I'm not interested in the speech.
If you don't want to hear my answer.
Did you offer the location of senior Hamas officials if they didn't invade Rafah? That's a yes or no.
If we had the locations, of course we'd provide them, irrespective.
So this statement, you're saying the Post got it totally wrong. It is utterly false. And anyone who said to the contrary was lying and perjuring themselves if they were under oath.
That statement is incorrect. We have done and will continue to do everything we can to, if we can do it, develop the information and share the information. I wish we had it.
Does the administration have intelligence on the locations of Hamas officials that you have not shared with Israel?
No.
Does the administration...
Did you notice that? No. No, they got info, guys. They do. Or at least they're bluffing and saying they do so that they can use it as a manipulation tactic to get Israel to do something that Israel shouldn't have to do. That's probably more the likely scenario. It's probably very likely that they don't have the intelligence, but they're claiming to be able to provide the intelligence in order to manipulate Israel into doing what they want Israel to do, what Israel shouldn't have to be manipulated into doing. Israel has the right to self-determination. They have the right to be able to defend themselves, and they have the right to be able to react aggressively when fired upon. This is ridiculous. And I'm telling you, the reason why Blinken can be so blatant about saying, no, is probably because they really didn't have the information. They used it as a bluff. They said, oh yeah, we've got this. We give this to you. You can help us out by not doing this. I promise you it was probably something like that. But who am I? I'm not tied into the government at all, but I have some ideas.
You should have the locations of Hamas terror tunnels that you have not shared with Israel.
No.
Okay, so then your position is that this story is an utter and complete lie.
As you've read it to me, Senator, it's not. It is not accurate.
And we're not interested in playing word games. I've asked you very directly.
I have not.
So you're saying there's not a single Hamas leader that you know about that you or the administration has offered will tell you where they are if you don't invade Rafah.
That is correct.
What have you offered them not to invade Rafah?
We've offered them nothing not to invade Rafah except a plan to deal more effectively with Rafah.
Okay, so your testimony under oath is you've offered them nothing not to invade Rafah. I find that very hard to believe, but I just want to understand what your testimony is.
I'll be very clear. We have told them, we've been engaged in a long conversation with them about the most effective way to deal with the problem we agree must be dealt with.
They are quite aware you disagree with their plan to kill the Hamas terrorists because you and the president have vocally said it. And to be clear, your State Department on the morning of October 7th sent out a tweet telling Israel not to engage in military retaliation. I called you out at 3 in the morning and you deleted that tweet. The next day, you personally on October 8th sent a tweet saying you had spoken with the Turkish foreign minister and Israel should not retaliate. From the very beginning, the Biden administration has consistently at every stage told Israel, and by the way, when I called your tweet out, you deleted it again. At every stage, you have been telling Israel, do not kill the terrorist, and that has been from day one.
Senator, I was in Israel 5 days after October 7th. I've been there 7 times since. No one, starting with President Biden, has done more to make sure they have what they need to defend themselves from Hamas, to deal with the threat that Hamas poses.
With all due respect,
I just want to say this before Ted Cruz responds to him. He's such a liar. Yeah, he's been out there a bunch of times, but he's been out there a bunch of times to get in the way of any type of retaliatory efforts being made by Israel in order to defend themselves. That's the whole purpose behind what they were doing. They're going over there to stunt the progress of Israel in seeking to defend their nation. That was all they did. And I'm making myself very, very clear. This is what is literally the problem with the Biden regime. They're God haters. So they're going to do what God haters do. It should not surprise anybody. This is what you see is what you get here, folks. Let's continue on.
Ludicrous. That is ludicrous. Why have you cut off weapons to Israel then?
We have not cut off weapons to Israel. In fact, as you know well, starting many years ago, President Biden was at the heart of the MOU that led to Israel having a 10-year guaranteed supply of assistance. When you became
Secretary of State, how much oil was Iran selling a day?
I'll have to come back to you on any numbers. I don't have the numbers.
You don't know. It doesn't surprise me you don't know. It was about 300,000. How much oil is Iran selling today?
We've applied sanctions against more than 200 entities.
Remember the word sanctions, by the way. Remember that word, okay? And let's go back and listen to his answer about how many barrels are being sold every day now. 300,000 was the number prior, okay? Look at how many barrels are being sold now.
We're engaged in petrochemicals.
How much oil?
You can tell me. I'm sure.
Don't filibuster.
I'm not filibustering.
How much oil are they selling today? Do you know?
You tell me.
Apparently you don't know. So you don't know how much they were selling. It was 300,000. Today they're selling about 2 million barrels a day. Let me ask you.
By the way, you know why they're selling 2 million barrels a day? They're selling 2 million barrels a day because when Russia got pushed into Ukraine by the United States of America, then sanctions were placed against Russia, and Russia was forced to, in essence, use other measures in order to be able to control the situation that they were placed in. And one of the measures that they used was how they actually managed their energy sales. And so they were selling to most of Eastern and Western Europe. And of course, within the process of doing that, we know that the sanctions very much crippled or attempted to cripple what Russia was doing with respect to that, without getting into a big old long detail, because I did do a live broadcast where I explained this at length, and we can make the connection here in this video. I'll put the link up right here. But here's the thing. I explain exactly what happened, but here's the thing. The relationship between Iran and Russia very much strengthened. And when they went from 300,000 barrels of oil to 2 million barrels of oil every single day, that was at the enabling of the United States of America, partially from the JCPOA, actually a large part due to the JCPOA, which is a worthless agreement. Not even worth the toilet paper in this studio, which the toilet paper in this studio is probably worth more than the JCPOA, because our toilet paper is nice. But here's the thing, okay? Understand this for just 1 second. The United States of America created that condition, and the extended amounts of sale exchanges happening with respect to oil and what happened with BRICS and everything else related to all of that was all because of the current regime in office. All because of Joe Biden, all because of Antony Blinken, and all because of Joe Biden's handlers. Let's make no mistake, okay? That's exactly what's going on here, okay? Yeah, all right, just so that we're clear.
And given the sanctions, given the export controls, given the other controls we put on, the cost of doing that, the evasion that they have to engage in, which we're trying to cut off.
They've made about $80 billion. Let me ask you another.
That's right. The cost of doing that made them a whole lot more money. $80 billion, and actually that number is probably a whole lot higher when you start getting into the advanced amount of money, the insane amount of money that Russia's been taking in from China. Because remember, there is an energy agreement that exists now between Russia and China that came as a result of all of this nonsense that the United States of America did, and that agreement is being fueled by oil from Iran as well. Oh, yeah. So what you might be paying $90 a barrel for, $100 a barrel for, now your tax money is paying $400 or $500 a barrel for that same oil to transport it in different places. And yes, you're paying Iran for it. I'm paying Iran for it. That's right, folks. That's exactly what's happening. Why? Because these fools are continuing to put in the hands of our enemies all kinds of money and resources to destroy us and to destroy Israel. That's exactly what's happening.
Question. I'm running out of time, so I'm not interested in speeches. Let me ask you this. How many ghost fleet ships did Iran have in November 2020?
Okay, I'm going to stop it right here just to give you an explanation regarding the ghost fleet ships that he's talking about. Iran has these ships that are somewhat undetectable. They go out of their way to make sure that they become undetectable, and they're going through the Persian Gulf, they're going in through the Indian Ocean, out through the Atlantic, they're going in different places, and they are transporting their oil that is supposedly sanctioned, right? At the time that all of these sanctions supposedly started, there were roughly 75 ghost fleet ships. And now, and Blinken's bragging about, oh, we've stopped 50 of them. We stopped 50 of them. Now there's over 300. So think about it like this, folks. The capacity of Iran to be able to get rid of their oil, to sell their oil, has actually tripled, if not quadrupled. Okay? Like that, actually, it's quadrupled. It's literally quadrupled. So there are so many more ghost fleet ships that are out there that are selling the oil and selling it way more expensive and enriching Iran and, of course, Russia. So when he asks about the ghost fleet ships, that's what he's talking about. And I think it's really important that you understand that so that you can develop a better understanding of the context here of what's going on. Listen to this, folks.
We have sanctioned more than 200
It's a question.
of those.
I'm not. How many did they have?
The total number, I can't tell you what it had in 2021. I'll come back to you with that. But we have.
The number was about 70.
Yeah,
how many did they have today?
We blocked about 50 of them.
Okay, let's see how effective you are. How many do they have today?
As I said, we blocked about 50.
How many do they have today?
You tell me. I'm sure you.
They have about over 400. Look, this administration desperately wants a new Iran deal. You have been showering cash on Iran from day one. And understand, the $6 billion you were asked about is the tip of the iceberg. By refusing to enforce oil sanctions, we have seen Iran's oil sales go from 300,000 barrels a day when you got into office to over 2 million barrels a day today. That's $80 billion. 90% of Hamas's funding comes from Iran in a very real sense. This administration, you and President Biden, funded the October 7th attacks by flowing $100 billion to a homicidal, genocidal regime that funded those attacks.
That statement is profoundly wrong.
Why?
I'm not even going to humor it. I think it's a disgraceful statement.
Why?
We have gone at Iran repeatedly with more than 600 sanctions applied against different persons.
Then why are they selling 2 million barrels a day as compared to 300,000?
They are working hard to do what they can to get around the sanctions.
So just the prior administration had tools you didn't have, they were more effective, or maybe they just weren't desperate to cut a deal with Iran.
And we continue every single day to go at them.
You are refusing to address the facts.
I'm not.
Then why are they selling 2 million barrels a day?
Because they're determined to try to do that. We're determined to cut them off.
They weren't determined when Trump was president?
They were determined. And of course, unfortunately, we also had their nuclear program in a box. No fissile material being produced.
Okay, you're not answering the question. You're filibustering another topic.
Not filibustering.
You get the last word. You get the last word. Billy.
You funded our enemies and you undermine our friends, and the world is much, much more dangerous as a result, and Americans are at greater jeopardy because of it.
Yep.
He's not wrong. He's absolutely right. And I want to say this because I think it's really, really important, right? We should not be surprised by the things that we're seeing. I bring out this issue with the United States of America because we were supposedly acting in the best interest of our country, which we have not been. I can tell you this right now. We've not been acting in the best interest of the world. This has been evil. And the United States of America was founded on biblical principles. And when we abandon those biblical principles, then we see what we're seeing right now. And folks, what do we expect? Look what it says in the book of Zechariah chapter 12. I've read it to you guys so many times. It says in Zechariah chapter 12, let's read this. This is verse 2 of Zechariah chapter 12. It says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about when they shall see in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem." Verse 3, "And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." Folks, this is absolutely crazy. Look at what it says in Zechariah chapter 14. Very similar language here. And again, we shouldn't be surprised, right? It says this, "Behold," verse 1, "the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the woman ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle." Okay, it's interesting. Look what it says in verse 4. "And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem in the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north and half toward the south." We're getting there. We're getting to that point. We're getting to the point where the nations will come against Jerusalem in a massive way. You know what's going to happen? When Christ comes back. We know what's going to take place, right? At the second coming, at the return of Christ, he's going to touch down on the Mount of Olives. He's going to split the Mount of Olives in half. He's going to make a valley right out of there, and we're going to see what happens. But the reality of it is we know that this is coming. We can see the world stage getting ready for it. We're watching it happen, folks. And folks, when we see videos like this, when we hear news like this, when we see things like this is what we should do. We should be preparing ourselves to get ready because we know the return of Christ is imminent, right? We know that the rapture is imminent. We know that Christ could come at any moment. We know it. We know that he can literally rapture us at any moment. And by the way, when the end of the tribulation happens and the second coming of Christ takes place, understand, even then, people will still be shocked because they deny the truth of God's word. But folks, it's laid out clearly for us. It's laid out clearly. Understand and know this. Christ could come at any moment. It's time to wake up. God bless you guys.